Hello everyone, thank you for joining. This is a live webinar where we are going to cover the latest feature roundup from 2022. Thanks for joining. My name is Claudio. I am a product specialist here at Archbee. I've been helping users evaluate Archbee or help them onboard. And this is where we will talk about what we worked on in the past year and how can this help you. On top of that, we're going to cover the newly released Archbee plans that are here to help you write and collaborate on documentation. So just to take a step back, Archbee's mission is to resync documentation and make it a team sport. This means that we want to provide advanced documentation features like reusable content, for example, but we also want to make it easy to collaborate with technical and non-technical people. Basically, we want to build a documentation platform that allows the capturing of product knowledge across the organization. So to do this, we're combining complex features with an easy-to-use interface. So Archbee can become that product knowledge hub that your company needs. That being said, let's go over the agenda. Pretty simple. I'll have an overview of the new released features. I'm going to focus on a few of them. Next, I'm going to talk about the features by presenting a use case, the most common use case for clients of Archbee. I'm going to share with you what's coming up in 2023, what's in the roadmap. And finally, we will have the Q&A. So that being said, let's go to the feature highlight over here to start talking about the most notable features that we launched in the past 12 months. So when we build features, we always have in mind these pillars. We want to make writing as easy as possible. So the writing experience is really important. We want to make it easy for you to publish, share the documentation. That's why we host it for you, and you have a bunch of options when you publish your documentation. And we also want to expand on the collaboration side. We saw that most of the time, in order for the documentation to be up to date, you need to collaborate with multiple people. And of course, on top of that, we have a bunch of integrations. You know, as a platform, we need to integrate with the source of the product knowledge, basically. So if you want to learn more about the most notable features, we do have an article where we covered exactly what we added. There are many features that you can look into. But what I'm going to focus on is how to use reusable content, how the OpenAPI and Postman collection import works, how you can leverage the GitHub sync, and using some of the publishing options like space links, contextual documentation widget, and maybe document verification at the end. So let's start by showcasing the use case. I've already set up a couple of spaces here. I have a space that's synced with GitHub. So if I go to space settings, GitHub integration, you'll see that I've already connected my GitHub account. This repo is already syncing and is pulling markdown files from a GitHub repo. And this is really useful because you can have documentation written in GitHub and it's been automatically synced with Archbee. And from here, you can either publish it or use it internally to share it with your non-technical teammates. So this is the first space, and for my example, this space will be like the home page, will be like the main space that I have. But let's go to the other space that I had set up here. So I have a OpenAPI and Postman collection import and sync, and I have two versions for this, and I'll cover how you can build versions immediately. But the idea is that I have a space where I have imported an OpenAPI reference, and this is automatically generated for me. So this is pretty useful if I have the file and I just want to quickly share it, with my developer documentation. And secondly, if I don't have a standard, but I'm using Postman, you can export a collection from Postman, and then you can look into how you can import that. So for example, clicking on these three dots, import, will open the import panel. So you can choose either OpenAPI or Postman collection. So the Postman Echo is just a collection that has been imported, and we generated the API references from there. On top of that, I mentioned the sync. If you click on these three dots on the category generated for the references, you can see the sync open API, and you have three options. You either re-upload the file whenever the file changes. If you host the file on a URL, you can sync it from there. So it's a lot easier. You don't need to change files. But if you want to automate this, you can add this command to your continuous integration system. And whenever it runs, it will send the updated file to Archbee, and we will sync it automatically. For this, you will need an API key, and you can get that at the space level. But just know that you also have this option to automate the sync. Now, I just wanted to show you the options of how you can get the content from other sources and import it in Archbee. So with GitHub, OpenAPI, Postman, but how do you put this together? So let's talk a little bit about space links and how you can build versions. So in my example over here, I have a space where maybe I'll have my product documentation, my user documentation. And here I just want to share my API references so that developers can start using my product. So if I go to space settings, space links, I've already set up my navigation, let's say. So I've added my home space. I can change the label, user docs, let's say. And here I have my API docs. I'll just keep it as that. Now, because I've linked between those spaces, when I go and publish, you'll see that I have two tabs over here. Think of this as a navigation. So my user docs is the initial space that I've published, and API docs is the second one, which basically has my API references. Now, let's say for the APIs, I'm going to build multiple versions. I'm going to launch, I'll have a legacy and, the current version. So to do that, you also have options. So you go again to space settings, version links. I've already enabled this, but let's go and change the labels. Current version, legacy one. Perfect. So whenever you want to build a version, the process is pretty simple. You just need to clone from an existing space. You just change the label, and after that, you'll manage from here. Let's say the legacy will be, it's still, actually, let's put this beta. We're still experimenting, right? So we'll have the legacy, which is the current version that I'm working on, but I'm playing around with the beta version if I want. So let's go ahead and publish this, and you'll see some changes. The changes are that here in V1, I have my API reference and the Postman collection, right? But in V2, the beta version, I just have my OpenAPI reference. So the change with the beta version will be that we'll just focus more on the OpenAPI standard, and we'll release only these references. So let me go back to my portal, refresh, and I'll have here my legacy version, which is the one that I'm currently using with my API, OpenAPI reference and the Postman collection import, and the beta version, the one that I would like to add and focus on developing only with the OpenAPI reference. So what I'm trying to showcase here is that you have a way for multi-product, multi-version situations to manage them with Archbee. What do I mean by that? If you have multiple products, each space can be a different product, or it can have a different scope, like in my example. But each space, if you have multiple products, and a space will have multiple versions just because you maintain multiple versions of a product, you can just use space version links over here to create multiple this drop down that you can switch between. So that's pretty powerful, to build a portal. And from here, I assume you already have knowledge about how you can gate the content, so on and so forth. But by now, you should have a custom domain added, right? You already, synced some content from other sources. I want to talk a little bit about a lesser known feature, which is, and the feature is called documentation widget. So if you go to space settings, widget integration, each space can be integrated within an app or a different portal so that you can access the product documentation from within your app. So what does that mean? We already implemented this in our own app. So this URL over here where it says click here, it will open my contextual documentation widget page, which is referring to this specific feature. So from here, instead of going to the portal and trying to learn about, okay, how does this work? Maybe search, it takes a lot of time. You can add this action on click to open the documentation page exactly where the user needs to read it. So this is not something that's been really highlighted in our releases, but it's really powerful, and we see a lot of clients adding this in their apps just to have the documentation where the reader needs it. Next, I would like to talk a little bit about reusable content and document verification. But first, I'll talk about document verification initially. So this is just a nice feature that you can use in your review process. So for example, let's go here. I have my document over here. I added all this content, which is nice, but now I want to set a owner of the document. And the owner of the document can be somebody that's, not the one that started the document. So to do that, I'll just go to this icon over here, turn on document verification. I'll set up my colleague as a verifier. And depending on, how I need to verify this document over and over again, I'll just select the verification interval. The idea here is that, if it's a document that needs to be reviewed every other week, you can do that. But, if you don't have a time frame, just click every year. It's just best practice to review the documents every other year. Now, what this does, it sends a notification to my colleague in the notification center. So you're being asked to verify this document. They click on that notification, they open this document, and from here, they have the standard collaboration tools. They can edit the document, so on and so forth. But when they're done and the document content is verified, they just click this button. And now I can see that this document was last verified on this date, and I can either unverify or ask for verification again, or add the verification again. So it's pretty powerful, and it's a lesser known feature that we launched, and I think it fits really well in the review process, just to make sure that people are verifying the contents of a document. Finally, let's talk about reusable content. So we found great success with a bunch of companies that need to manage content, but for multiple clients maybe, or in different contexts. So how reusable content is used? You just open reusable content and you have the option to define variables. I already defined a bunch of variables here, and also define some content snippets, right? Content snippets, if I create a new content snippet here, title. The power of content snippets is that you have the full power of the editor. So you can write the content of a document and reuse that content across multiple documents and across multiple spaces. Let me show you what I mean. So for example, I would like here to add a heading, some items, and a code editor. This is just some random text, right? But this text will need to be shared with multiple people that are in different spaces, and it's basically the same thing. Save content. How do you use it? You go to your space, create a new document, or an existing document for that matter, welcome, and you just type /, and then you go to content snippets. And from here, you have the list of content snippets that you just defined, I'll just use my setup and install tag manager, which is, the installation steps probably will be the same for any other client. / content snippets API. And now I've created the document. I'm using two different content snippets, and you have a single source, a single place where you can work with this. So for example, if I want to go here and I want to just, let's see, click create. I want to delete this step. I save my content. It will update, and I don't have the step here anymore. The idea is that you have a single source from where you can manage the content, but you use it across other spaces and documents. So if I go to my OpenAPI file over here, just create a new document, title, and let's say I have an API content snippet actually. And here I want to add the API again. Now I have this content snippet in two different documents, but I need to change the title. New title. Save content snippet. Now I have my new title over here, and I scroll down, the new title over here. It's pretty powerful. The way I've seen this being used is that, if you have 5 different clients and you're working on implementing your solution with them, most of the time you would find that the documentation is the same, but you still have some situations where it will different. The implementation will be different. So the part that is the same, you can define it as a reusable content as a content snippet, and then just create spaces from there, documents, share the exact same knowledge with multiple clients, but where you need to add extra content and extra, you just do that from here. Let's add another heading, here a code editor. And this content, of course, because it's not a content snippet, it's just, available for this space, which is called reusable content. Pretty powerful in the larger scheme of things. So I just wanted to share how this actually works. Now, in terms of variables, that's also pretty powerful to use, because if you have different names for your product or your business, or you want to use variables for your clients, you can do that pretty simple. So you can define a variable from the reusable content, but then to add them, you just need to open parentheses and say something like company name, product, at email. And this is green because it will, show you that basically this is a variable, and if you click on it, it will open the variables. And from here, let's just add here some words, and it will update. It's pretty powerful to use variables so that somewhere down the road you don't end up using like a find or replace. This is the best option to manage, the more common words that you're using. That being said, I wanted to go over some of the features. So I've talked about how you can integrate and sync a GitHub repo with Archbee, how you can import OpenAPI and Postman collections. On top of that, once you add your content, how you can use space links to build some type of navigation for a multi-product portal. And also, if you manage versions for products, so on and so forth, you can do that also. On top of that, if you have a user interface and you want to provide the product documentation within your app, so you don't lose your customers and users to go to the portal and then come back and try it out, they can open the documentation from within your app. And finally, we talked about reusable content and the power to have this type of feature available on different plans. So that's about it. Now, in terms of feature highlights, we could talk about the new blocks that we launched, what improvements we had, the options that you have now for publishing spaces, PDF export. We released multiple APIs, multiple calls for our public API. So there's a lot to digest, but I'll just continue to share with you what are the newly released plans for Archbee. So we talked about reusable content and the GitHub sync. And I think this will be the focus, because whenever you want to use GitHub as the place where you write your content, now this is available in the growing plan. This was not available previously. And now on the scaling plan, we added reusable content with content snippets and variables. And this is pretty powerful. So any of these two plans, you can upgrade now. If you're on a plan that's legacy plan, you have a legacy plan, you can go to your account settings, and from there you can upgrade now for 10% off. So you'll have access to the newly launched features in the new plans. Now, whenever you have questions, you can reach out to the support team by clicking the question mark and either sending an email to support@archbee.com or sending us a message from here. So you can either open a support ticket or report a bug. Also, you can check what's new by looking at the change log. And if you want, you can go to roadmap.archbee.com, and from here you can make your suggestions to help us improve the product. So right now we're building the roadmap for 2023. So if you want to make any suggestions, just open a support ticket or go and check the roadmap. Let's see what's coming up in 2023. So we're updating the editor technology, and this is coming sooner than next year. We're gonna work on this and focus on laying down a better foundation to build other features and more features that are really helpful for you. Next year, we'll start working on a review system. So now in the future, you'll have access to this mark a page as draft feature, which basically allows you to publish a space, but hiding the page that it is in draft until it's ready to be published. So that will be quite useful. Real-time collaboration, we're going to add that. At the moment, you can collaborate on the same document, but it's not real-time. So if you have a situation where you need to go in with a colleague and work on a document at the same time, we'll add a real-time collaboration improvement similar to Google Docs. Now, we'll have another feature called GitHub Code Sync, which basically allows you to sync a code editor block with some code examples from a GitHub repo. So you'll select the code example from GitHub. You'll want to share it with us, and from there we'll just automatically keep it in sync. We'll add improvements on the notifications, get more timely emails, improvement on the UX and UI of the search. And of course, we're going to build even more on top of the existing feature called content snippets. And we'll have some improvements, on how you can use those for more use cases. And that's about it. I'll wrap it up at this moment, and do let me know if you have any questions, and reach out to us whenever you want to talk about the new plans or talk about a specific use case that you want to achieve, or you want to contribute to the roadmap. The easiest way to get these new features that I've been talking about is just to go to your account settings over here, subscription and billing, and from there you'll have your button to upgrade with 10% off from your legacy plan to the new plan that we launched. I hope this was helpful, and looking forward to get feedback from you.